The email came in at 2:11 a.m. I remember the time exactly because I was still awake, scrolling aimlessly, when the notification popped up on my screen. The subject line read, "I don't think he knows I survived." At first, I almost ignored it. I get emails like that all the time, creepy titles, exaggerated claims, but something about this one felt different. Maybe it was the wording. Maybe it was the time it was sent. Or maybe it was the fact that the message itself was unusually short. It read, "Please tell my story. People think these things only happen in movies. They don't. I'm Astrumov, but barely. And he's still out there." And attached was a document. I opened it, and what I read stayed with me for weeks. The writer said his name was Daniel. This happened to him in late October 2019. He had just moved into a small rental house on the outskirts of a rural town. It was the kind of place where neighbors were miles apart, where nights were completely silent except for insects and distant animals. He said he liked the isolation. At first, the house itself was old but livable. Wooden floors, thin walls, a back door that led into a dense patch of trees. The landlord told him the previous tenant left suddenly but didn't explain why. Daniel didn't think much of it until the third night. He woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of knocking. Not at the front door, at his bedroom window. He froze in bed, listening. The knocking was slow, deliberate. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps again. He convinced himself it was a branch, but there were no trees close enough to touch the window. The knocking stopped after about a minute. He didn't check. He told himself he was imagining it and went back to sleep. The next morning, he noticed something strange. Footprints, right outside his bedroom window. Bare footprints. He lived far from any sidewalks or public roads. No reason for anyone to be walking behind his house, especially barefoot. He checked the ground more carefully. The prints came from the tree line, stopped at his window, then went back into the woods. That was the first time he felt uneasy. He bought motion lights that same day and installed them facing the backyard. For 2 nights, nothing happened. On the third night, the lights turned on at 2:47 a.m. He woke up because his room suddenly filled with bright white light through the curtains. He stayed still, listening. Then he heard it again. 3 taps. This time louder, closer. He slowly got out of bed and stood beside the window, too afraid to look directly. Another 3 taps. He finally forced himself to peek through the curtain and immediately wished he hadn't. There was a man standing inches from the glass, tall, unnaturally thin, completely still, and barefoot. Daniel said the man wasn't knocking anymore. He was smiling. Not a normal smile. Wide, stiff, like he was forcing his mouth open. Their eyes met. The man's smile slowly faded. Then he raised one finger and pressed it gently against the glass, exactly where Daniel's face was behind the curtain. Daniel stumbled backward, fell, and scrambled out of the room. He grabbed his phone and called the police. By the time officers arrived 20 minutes later, the backyard was empty. But the footprints were back. This time, there were more. Not just near the window, all around the house, like the man had been walking in circles. The police searched the woods briefly but found nothing. They told Daniel it was probably a trespasser trying to scare him. They advised him to keep doors locked. So he did. He double-checked every window, every lock, every night. A week passed. No lights turning on, no knocking. He started to relax again. Until one night while watching TV, he heard a sound from the hallway. A floorboard creak. He muted the TV silence. Then another creak. Slow footsteps. Inside the house. He immediately ran to the kitchen and grabbed the largest knife he had. "Hello?" he shouted, his voice shaking. The footsteps stopped. Then he heard breathing. Low, slow, close. Coming from just around the hallway corner. Daniel said he stood there for what felt like minutes, knife in hand, waiting. Then, a shadow moved along the wall. He lunged around the corner. No one was there, but the back door was open. Wide open. The police came again. No forced entry, nothing stolen. Just muddy barefoot prints, leading from the back door, stopping outside Daniel's bedroom. That night, Daniel didn't sleep. At around 4 a.m., exhausted, he must have drifted off on the couch because he woke up to pressure on his chest. At first, he thought it was sleep paralysis, until he realized he could move his eyes, and what he saw above him wasn't paralysis. It was the man, straddling his chest, smiling again. Daniel said the man whispered something he'll never forget. "You weren't supposed to wake up last time." Daniel started thrashing, screaming, trying to push him off. The man didn't resist. He just slid off calmly, walked to the back door, and left. Police never found him. Daniel moved out 2 days later. The landlord stopped responding to calls. Months later, Daniel found a local news article. The previous tenant had disappeared, last seen barefoot, walking into the woods behind the house, and was never found. The second story was sent by a woman named Marissa. She said she debated for years whether to tell anyone. This happened during a long overnight bus trip she took in 2017. She was traveling alone, heading back home after visiting family. It was one of those long-distance coaches where the lights dim after midnight and most passengers fall asleep. She had a window seat near the back. Around 1 a.m., she woke up because the bus had stopped. Not at a station, on the side of a dark, empty road. She looked around. Most people were asleep. Except for the man sitting across the aisle from her. He was already looking at her. Not in a casual way, just staring, unblinking. She looked away quickly, pretending to check her phone. When she glanced back, he was still staring. She felt uncomfortable but assumed he was just a creep. The bus started moving again. She tried to sleep, but every time she opened her eyes, he was still looking at her. At some point, she pretended to be asleep. Through half-closed eyes, she saw him slowly stand up and move seats, closer to her. He sat directly behind her. She could hear his breathing now, slow, controlled. Then she felt something brush her hair. She turned around immediately. He was sitting back normally, hands in his lap, smiling faintly. She reported him to the driver at the next stop. The driver said the man claimed he hadn't moved seats at all. There was no proof otherwise. So they told her to sit closer to the front. She did, thinking that was the end of it. But around 3 a.m., while most passengers slept again, she noticed something horrifying. The reflection in the bus window. She could see behind her without turning, and what she saw was the man crouched in the aisle, slowly crawling toward her seat. She spun around instantly. No one was there. She checked the aisle. Empty. Heart racing, she turned back toward the window and froze, because now the reflection showed him standing directly behind her seat. But when she turned again, still no one. She was shaking it at this point, convinced she was losing her mind. Then she heard a whisper near her ear. "Don't turn around this time." She ran to the driver screaming. The bus was searched fully at the next terminal. The man was gone. No one remembered seeing him get off. But security footage showed something disturbing. At one of the earlier roadside stops, the bus doors never opened. Yet footage showed the man standing outside the bus, watching it as it drove away, meaning he was never officially a passenger. To this day, Marissa refuses overnight travel. The third story came from a security guard named Elias. He worked night shift at a half-abandoned office complex scheduled for demolition. Most buildings were empty, no electricity in some wings. His job was simple: patrol, log movement, call police if needed. He worked alone. One night around 2:30 a.m., while doing his rounds, he noticed a light on in an upper office window. That building had no power.